The reading process. I have divided this topic into two audio PowerPoints, which allows for a brief intermission between the two. Each PowerPoint is about 10 minutes long. Here is part 1 of the reading process. What is reading? Reading is the ability to construct meaning from a wide range of books and printed material. We use reading to gain knowledge and experience. It's the disposition to read actively, use skills acquired, and persist until reading or learning goals are met. This is what reading is, but what is involved in making reading happen? Why are some students good readers while others are not? So what does reading involve? According to Marilyn Jagger Adams, author of Beginning to Read, reading depends first and foremost on visual letter recognition. To be fluent and productive, however, reading also depends on ready knowledge of words, their spellings, meanings, and pronunciations, and on consideration of the contexts in which they occur. There are 4 processors that are involved in this activity. In the case of proficient readers, they work together seamlessly, smoothly, and quickly, and in a fashion that we, for the most part, are unconscious of. The 4 processors are the phonological processor, the orthographic processor, the meaning processor, and the context processor. All of these processors stimulate, support, and interact with one or more other processors in an apparently seamless way to make reading and the construction of meaning happen. In addition, each processor is comprised of interconnected sets of simpler units of knowledge, which also interact with each other during the reading process as well. We will look at each of these processors in greater detail. Ideally, the reading process is like a well-tuned auto and driver. The gas is the print. Once in the car, the finely tuned engine consisting of the 4 processors works smoothly together to transform that gas into energy. But we still need the driver. He or she is the reader that has the purpose for reading. Be it reading for enjoyment or to gain information, they put the gas in and turn the key to put the whole process in motion. So are you ready to take a look under the hood? Reading is a complex process. If someone gave you a piece of text written in Arabic or Russian or any other of a wide variety of foreign languages, would you be able to read it? Why or why not? What do you think each bulleted line is saying? If you answered reading is a complex process, you'd be correct. We were able to glean that from the German, the Spanish, and the French because the letter symbols or characters are the same as in English, and the words themselves are very similar, especially for the words complex and process. But how would you fare trying to read the Russian, Arabic, Hebrew, or Japanese? Here the symbols or characters for letters are completely different. So where does reading really start? Does it start with knowledge of an alphabet and the alphabetic principle? The alphabetic principle is basically that letters or symbols work together in a systematic way to connect spoken language to written words. This understanding is the foundation for reading, but actually the ability to read begins even further back than this understanding, that all those funny squiggles and lines actually mean and represent sounds and words. Even if you could somehow replicate and say the sounds making the words in the above language for each bulleted item, you still probably would not be able to understand what you read, because you do not have any knowledge of that language itself, unless of course you took French or Spanish in high school. So being able to read in any language first requires a foundation and grasp of that language on an oral basis. It's all about communication. Being able to read hinges on oral language development. Oral language requires the production of sounds in a selected sequence to make spoken words, which in turn are ordered in a structured format to convey a meaning. K, t, at has no meaning, but the same sound sequenced as k, at does have meaning. The words is cat the big conveys no meaning either, but has meaning when sequenced as the cat is big. In English, most simple sentences have a subject which is mentioned first, followed by a verb, and then a descriptor of the subject or an object or a prepositional phrase such as the cat curled up on the rug. This syntax or word order is the context for the word. We'll hear more about that later. The syntax or word order is important, but you must also have meaning of the words themselves to make sense out of the sentence. The nilgai is big is a simple sentence also. However, if you don't know what a nilgai is, the meaning of this sentence is lost. English has approximately 44 different sounds or phonemes. Many languages have sounds in common with us, but other languages might have more or fewer or different sounds entirely from English. For example, in German there is no sound for the th. You won't find any Matthews or Marthas in the German language. Students must be able to pronounce these 44 phonemes in order to read aloud accurately. But even when we are reading silently, our phonological processor is still at work, matching sounds to letters and letter patterns. The phonological processor is the speech sound system. It identifies, compares, and manipulates sounds. It's responsible for the pronunciation and production of sounds and words. It holds the auditory image, and as such is the memory for sounds, words, and phrases. It's responsible for the linkage between sounds, spellings, and meanings. The very first time you saw the word H'(O')R'(D'(E')'U''V'(R') in print, you may not have recognized it. However, if you heard the word hors d'oeuvre, you probably recognized the word and knew what it meant. You can thank your phonological processor for that. So why is this important? The phonological processor allows us to translate what we see in print into matching sounds in our heads. With emergent readers, this is letter by letter sounding out of a word. Watch a room full of first graders doing silent reading. It is hardly silent, as there is usually a lot of subvocalization going on. This is a function of the phonological processor. Once the sound-symbol association becomes stabilized and students merge to identifying chunks of words and word patterns, and even whole words by sight automatically, this heavy subvocalization isn't needed. So, is subvocalization good or bad? Actually, it can be very helpful. As we mentioned, young readers often subvocalize when they read silently, but usually this diminishes over time. However, we never entirely dispense with this tool. Have you ever read or reread a piece of complex text softly to yourself or aloud? Sometimes hearing what you read helps you to decide or confirm if it really makes sense to you, and if you've got the right pronunciation, and therefore the correct word in mind, for any challenging vocabulary. It is also known that the phonological translations of words remains in memory longer than visual images of that word. By thinking or speaking the words to ourselves, skillful readers effectively renew the word's phonological activation or imprint, and as a result, extends the longevity and ability to hold onto these auditory images in our verbatim memory. That's the phonological processor working overtime. In essence, this helps us to process and remember what we have read because of the auditory input that is being triggered. When a skillful reader encounters an unfamiliar printed word, the phonological processor can automatically translate the units or patterns of letters that are familiar within a word. With these chunked pronunciations in mind, the reader can usually arrive at an approximation and then accurate pronunciation of a never-before-seen word. This is especially true if the word is already part of his or her receptive or expressive vocabularies and they have heard and used that word orally before. Try reading these words out loud. Now try reading the second list out loud. Which set of words was easier to pronounce, and why do you think that is? The first set of words contain common word patterns or sequences that we have seen many times before, while the second are actually foreign words, and they have unfamiliar letter sequences that our phonological processor has little experience with or memory of. Did you find yourself looking more closely at each letter in the second set of the words and trying to determine how to pull the letters together to pronounce them? That was your phonological processor hard at work. We're going to give our phonological processor a rest at this point. When you're ready, please resume with the next audio PowerPoint, the reading process, Part 2.